Talk about everything DEI related under the sun. I am super, super excited this week to be joined by Ashley. But first, let me do a couple of things. For those of you that are celebrating Juneteenth, fantastic. And for those of you who are spending some time either today or this weekend getting educated, reflecting, and thinking about things, we will post some links in the chat to great information around Juneteenth. And of course, you can always reference Everyday Inclusion and the content that we have in the app around Juneteenth. All right, Ashley, we met just a couple of weeks ago. We were both speaking at the Conference Board's DEI conference. And we immediately connected, and I think it's more than just being redheads. So, Ashley, if you would introduce yourself, and then we're going to talk about a whole framework that you've put together around empowerment and how that really leads to inclusion.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm so honored to be here. And I think about everyday inclusion and how it's such an empowering action when you do inclusion. I love that. It's like our brands coming together. It's like, yes, it's that intersection point. It's our intersectionality. But yeah, so I'm the founder and president of Empowering Differences, which is a empowerment and leadership educational based organization. And I founded this organization when I decided to go against the grain and come outside my comfort zone and live my truth and live my life authentically back in 2008.
Time ago or just yesterday, Ashley?
Right? Yeah, quite a long time ago. But yeah, I came out during the interview process while looking for employment after the 2008 financial crisis. It hit me hard. I lost my job. I was left without a house. I had my house taken from us, 4 mouths to feed. So battling homelessness, and it was not a good time. It really was difficult, and while I realized that I could use at my white and cis presenting at the time, male presenting privilege, I could walk my way to an entry level job very easily.
Yep.
And that's when my aha moment went off. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to start at the bottom again in my second career, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be me, and I'm going to be authentic, because it's not that big of a risk to hire somebody at the bottom.
Yep.
So I did. So literally on a second interview, I showed up after having that aha moment, and I showed up as Ashley, authentically, all day. And I immediately got told, well, you don't have an interview here today. Oh, you have the wrong address. Please leave. I actually had the cops called on me. I got trespassed. That was what my living my authentic life ultimately was, facing discrimination and harassment in addition to homelessness. And all of those at the same time, I said, wow, I need a framework to get through this. And that's when I built the framework for empowering your differences, because we all have them.
Yes.
It's just how we use a centric force to make a major impact.
Yes.
Will be whether or not you are struggling or thriving. Which one is it? Surviving or thriving?
Yeah. It's interesting. And of course, I'm forgetting her first name right now. Dr. Lanier. I will think of your first name. She was on, and she talked about how differences are not a deficit, right? And so many times people look at this as differences being a deficit versus differences being a superpower. So tell me about this, the framework, and how individuals can apply that, and how teams and how organizations can apply it.
Yeah, so the framework is a 4-step process. And so step 1 is to know yourself. And step 2 is to know others. And those two parts of this framework are really largely supported by a self-assessment that I built.
Yep.
And the self-assessment really helps you to categorize and organize your differences that you have,
Yep.
and your intersectionality, your privileges, your disprivileges, your empowerment. And it's several, actually a collection of open-ended questions to help get you thinking about who you really are. And I've kind of uncovered these questions and this process of knowing yourself and then knowing others, a part of actually what I like to call is a transgender superpower. Because when someone goes through a major life transition, because now let's think about this transition, we transition all day long with different things. Oh, I got to go to the transition to that next meeting. I got to transition in my job function. Right. We use that word really, really loosely, but really it's all about preparation and examination and then execution. And being able to do that and look at that holistically is not many people take that and look at their life that way. Right. And every trans person has to do that in order to survive in this world.
Right.
And so I took those pieces and said, why not apply this to anybody and any difference? Because it can make a difference.
Yes.
So that's what, so that is that first part of the 4-step process.
And I want to hang here for a second, Ashley, because I think, right, this is the foundational piece. So, because if I can't do that, I can't do the other things, right? So,
right.
And thinking
if you don't get yourself right, how the heck are you going to help anybody else?
Yeah. And by the way, I think for me, I always say I'm on a constant do it to myself learning project that I'm never going to be done, sort of uncovering, unraveling, unwrapping, unlearning all of the things. And we'll put the link. Ashley, thank you. I know that you've got this assessment out on your website, so we'll put the link on there. And having gone through and really exploring some of the questions, there is this idea that one of the things that I'm really hopeful in people taking the assessment, and just in general, is that it really helps to uncover all of us. And I guess that's the all of us, right? That where do I exist in this world, and how can I understand where I exist in this world, spend privilege where I have it, understand why I may be coming at things a certain way, and just continuing to sort of unpack. So I think the work here of understanding your own beautiful, diverse self, I think is so important. And I love that you put an assessment together for this, because it's really easy to skip that over, right? And to not really.
Oh yeah, we want to get to the actions.
Yeah, right. So the deep reflection part, I think, is I love that part of your framework. Okay, so know myself, which I think again is the never-ending journey. Now let's talk about, right. Now let's talk about knowing others.
Yeah, so knowing others for me is largely, is kind of a little bit starting through the self-assessment, but the rest of that is built on research. So for me and my journey, I wasn't able to really start empowering my differences unless I could actually speak to my differences. And the self-identification, the concept of self-identification is really a hot topic in workplaces these days. And the importance of identifying and giving employees an opportunity to identify their gender, their race, their ethnicity, their LGBTQ or disability status. All of those things are things that many organizations are looking to track that data. But if you as an individual don't know the data about all the other people who come with you in strength and power and empowerment, then you're not going to be in a better position to really leverage your differences. So anytime I was in a job interview early on trying to find employment, I learned through this experience, and I realized that I needed to know others so that way it wasn't only just me, right? Self-identification, when it's only you, that's not a good place to be. You never want to have identification on an island on its own. So if I share something about myself, that's a difference that I have, and all I do is share that difference and say, oh yeah, by the way, I am a transgender person. And all I do is say that, and I don't bring any empowerment with it. I'm literally leaving it to you as the listener of what I've just shared to take it any which way you want to take it. But if I instead say that I'm one of 2 million estimated transgender people who live in this country, now I'm not alone. Or if I say that I'm a part of the $1.7 trillion economic buying power that LGBTQ plus businesses have in America, which would be the 10th largest economy in the world on its own, now I'm definitely not alone.
Right.
And if you don't put in the time to do that research to know the other people around you, then you're not going to be in a position ready for empowerment.
And is there a piece of this when I'm understanding the people around me? We talk a lot. I mean, we built the app with this idea of giving people a tool to really understand others, right? And to be inclusive and to move from this idea of we call it NBC, nice but clueless, right? Having good intentions but not understanding our impact. Right, so shifting to impact in knowing others, that our impact can be empowering, can be inclusive. So this piece of this too, that it's just understanding and staying on a journey of understanding all kinds of, I call it just this beautiful range of diversity. Right, so just staying curious.
Yeah. And the 5 chapters in the book that go with step 2 is where understanding intersectionality, understanding privilege, understanding political differences, because we do have them, and if we don't understand them and learn from them, we can't really move forward. So there are 5 chapters dedicated to each step in the book. It's broken up 5 by 5 by 5.
And folks can
and yeah, that's exactly where that comes into.
I was going to say, people can get the book on your website, and then I know that you have done some things supporting independent LGBTQ plus bookstores as well. So if you want to get Ashley's book, highly recommend that as well. All right, so let's talk about 3 and 4. Steps 3 and 4. Empowerment
in action. Yeah, we're going to start putting things into action. So step 3 is now to develop your strategy of how you're going to empower your differences. So you now have the data, you now know a lot about yourself, but now how are you going to put it into action? And so this is where you start dipping your toe into my 10 empowering actions to leverage change, and start to identify what order you want to use the empowering actions. So for me, in trying to find employment post 2008 crisis as an out transgender person with no college degree, I was forced to really think about how I was going to have to be strategic to use these actions to get hired. And so I prioritized the first 3 actions, and you'll see in the book, they're in a specific order because that order was how I used the 10 empowering actions to leverage change. And that order for me was to lead with empowerment as my first action, because I was already coming from behind 30 social economic levels from the transgender community. And I really needed to give so much empowering data to set a level playing field to be equal to somebody else as a candidate for that job. And I tried to lead with education in my first, because I had more than 40 interviews trying to find a job, an entry level job.
Right.
And so those, and I led with education actually at first, which was great because I was literally having a dialogue about what trans is, what cisgender is, what it isn't, what words not to use.
And I want to say, let's rewind the tape for people. 2008, this was not a mainstream conversation.
Mm-mm. I was literally and by the time that I started going through these job interviews, it was probably closer to 2010, because it took me a little time to know myself and then know others, because everyone's journey.
Mainstream conversation, right? We're talking
right
12 years ago.
Yeah, before the transgender tipping point.
Yes.
In 2015.
Yep. Okay, so keep going.
And
I just wanted to again set that context, right, of the power of the power of this framework and leading with leaning in to who you are as a superpower versus leaning back. And so you started with education, and that was not working.
Well, it was leading to a longer conversation. My average interview went from 15 minutes to 45 minutes. Because humans are naturally curious and are naturally inquisitive. Right. I mean, this is literally why we wanted to sail the ocean.
Right.
Right.
Nice but clueless, right? Wanting to do the right thing, sort of being
right.
curious. Okay.
That's why we want to go to Mars now, right? I mean, like,
right.
You know, this is that human curiosity. So because of that, I was able to capitalize to sit in the chair longer. So statistically, I was thinking, if I sit in this chair longer, then that might lead to a job offer.
Right.
But it wasn't. But then I decided to lead with inspiration, which is empowering action number 2. And now that took me further, because I would talk about overcoming homelessness, overcoming other discrimination and harassments, literally the things that I went through to be in this chair today, to have this job interview with you, to come into this moment. Imagine how much work I'm going to do for your organization and prove that I belong.
Yes.
And so inspiration was working and telling my story that way. It's largely, for me, the empowering action of inspiration is largely built on how you paint the narrative and communicate your story with others.
Yep.
And that was powerful. And when you communicate.
Well, and story, right? The power of story is so, right? People could listen to that, they could hear that, they could understand. And then you were connecting the dots in terms of, and I'm going to bring all that to you.
Right. And that's turning inspiration into an empowering action to leverage change. Nice. It's exactly the framework that I built.
Yep.
So I said, wait a minute, and I put my HR hat on because I had worked a prior career for 12 years and I was a leader of 50 people. So I had already been in that person's shoes, figuratively. And so I said, wait, what am I missing? And I said, oh, I'm missing the data. I'm missing the empowerment. I'm missing all this. So I said, that's when I started talking about, right, the 2 million, the $1.7 trillion. And then I would follow that up with the inspiration. And then I would follow that up with the education in that order. That was the order for using my 10 key empowering actions. I finally developed my strategy of how I was going to not only get a job, but then excel in my career, because I found that job as a part-time bank teller. And that leads to now, 2 things. One is it led to step 4, which is the empowering actions. So keep doing the empowering actions, all 10 of them. but have a prioritization in order depending upon which difference you are empowering. You may use them differently based on your difference. And then the other thing that led to was I used the all 10 actions, especially now. That doesn't mean action 7, 8, 9, and 10 weren't important. They were actually probably more important in growing my career from part-time bank teller to national vice president of diversity and inclusion in less than 5 years.
Right.
With no college degree, being openly trans, and navigating all the things that I was navigating, homelessness. I literally was still without house when I worked as a teller, because you don't necessarily make a bunch of money working in an entry level position. Yeah.
So, there's just so much. That's what I'm like. I even want.
And I'm having a little hard time hearing you. Is it my volume or is it yours? I'm just.
It could be mine, and I'll lean in. I'll lean in.
You just sound a little far away.
Is that better?
Oh, I like that. Yeah, a little bit.
Where would you suggest people start? Right? Just with this whole, with the whole journey and the idea of difference, diversity, empowerment, inclusion, right? Because you're really like, if I am, for example, saying that if I'm taking any one of my dimensions where I'm in an underrepresented group, and I am leaning into that, and I am leading with that, and I am using that as empowerment. How could a person individually, now actually, how could a team use this, Ashley?
Well, I mean, I think that they can use this. So empowerment is giving power and authority to someone else. And it's a selfless act. And that selfless act would be where I would start.
Yeah.
I want to provide more empowerment for someone. So if you're out there and you're listening today and you have a hardship and you want to enroll in my course, send me an email. Ashley@empoweringdifferences.com. And if you have a hardship, I'm going to provide you access to the course for free, because empowerment is not ever easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's designed to be difficult. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So we have to remove barriers to access for others. Yes. That would be where I would start and say, hey, what is the hardship that exists for someone that is not me? How can I help remove a barrier to access? And if you do that every day and you try to remove a barrier, then you're going to be providing empowerment, like ready.
And so what I love about that is in the language that we often use on this series is that's spending your privilege. That's showing up in every situation, understanding your privilege, both your systemic privilege and your situational privilege, and spending that privilege. And spending it in some cases, in terms of how we're going to run this meeting, or how can I, right? So at sort of the systems level or at the individual level, what can I do right now to remove a barrier for Ashley, to spend my privilege so that Ashley is empowered? Awesome. I love that. And remove a barrier, spend your privilege, right? Use whatever language you want, folks.
Yeah. One of my favorite things quoted from the book is, how, like, when we joined early, I was like, can you hear me? And you were like, can you hear? Right. And we did a mic check, right? What about at this moment? Oh, well, I was going to say actually got louder. But I was going to say, so from the book, I actually quote this as, instead of doing a mic check, well, do mic checks too. But in addition to doing a mic check, do a privilege check.
Yes.
Literally just in that same kind of cadence. Like every time you join a meeting in your workplace, you're like, okay, can you see my screen? Right? You're checking to see if the screen works, right? But if you do that same principle every morning that you wake up and you do a privilege check, just like you would do a tech check or a mic check or a mirror check, right? I know I do the mirror check just to make sure everything's looking good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do all that, but why wouldn't we do that for empowering others? We should.
I love that. And that's such a simple framework, right? That is such a simple thing to be able to do, right? I'm doing the mic check. I'm doing the privilege check, right? I'm doing the empowerment check. We're going to put links to everything in the chat. Ashley, as we're wrapping up, give me, and I'm hoping
we're
that
already done.
I know, it flew by. I knew it was going to. I knew it was going to. Give me one last truth bomb.
Oh. I gave so many. I
know,
didn't save
I know,
any back.
right?
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest truth bomb I can say is that ultimately, by going through this framework, the biggest thing that I want you to take away is self-actualization. That's why my self-assessment is open-ended questions that you can see what you wrote. Right? There are plenty of assessments where it's hidden. You said yes or no, or you answered, and then you spit back a response to you that you are a this or you are a that. Okay. And then they give you a report and you can do these actions to make it better. Okay. I'm not saying that that's not good. Okay. But mine is different on purpose. Okay.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, when you do your self assessment and then you go through my course, and then you go through and you read the book and you get all the empowerment. At the end of the day, the last step in my workbook is going to be to take your self-assessment again.
Yes.
And you're going to take the self-assessment again. You're going to look back at what you wrote before. Okay. And then when you take it again, you're going to be able to tell if you've answered any of the questions differently. And the difference is, now have been empowered because you got self-actualization to see if you realized there was any difference in what you said before versus where you are now.
Well, and this just seems like, to me, Ashley, again, the do it to yourself project, this is ongoing, right? So like, I think we keep realizing things, we keep understanding things about ourselves. Society keeps shifting, right? None of this happens in a vacuum, and it's not like we're ever done. So I love that you already have built in, okay, here's this self-assessment, okay, take it again. And then I would say, and take it again, and take it again, right? And just keep looking,
yes.
right, as you're evolving and as you're learning and as you're growing and as you're shifting, because our identities, some of them are fixed and many of them are not. More of our identities are not fixed than those that are. So
yeah, and you can apply that 4-step process of empowerment. Like I literally have applied the 4-step process of empowering yourself like hundreds of times.
Yeah.
On every single decision. I did that for a nonprofit organization. I've done that for my role in a nonprofit. I've done that for my role in my career, for my company, for the book that I was writing.
Yeah.
Keep applying it. Because privilege, intersectionality, all the things that we talk about, everyday inclusion, every day it changes.
Yeah.
So you have to engage every single day and ask these questions every day for that reason.
Awesome. Ashley, I knew this was going to be great. I super appreciate you sharing your brilliance with us. We'll put the links to all of Ashley's fantastic resources in the chat. Reach out to her. And as we always say, get out there and do the next right thing and build that everyday inclusion.
Y'all, we will see you next week. And Ashley, again, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Bye, y'all.